Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I speak with Kellan Jett, illustrator and concept artist. Enjoy.
Hello. Yo. Hey.
What's up, dude?
Nothing much, man.
Did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles come out today?
It did. It is. Yeah, it's officially out, man. It's crazy. Technically, I guess you could see it yesterday. I watched it in theaters yesterday. But yeah, today was the official release date, and
is that the biggest project you've ever worked on?
I think Spider-Verse 2 is probably the biggest project I've ever worked on, but I was sort of like a normal to smaller level of involvement on Spider-Verse 2 for like the title. You know, the project was 4.5 years, and I was on for like a year and a half, or a little bit less than a year and a half. And Turtles was a 3-year project, and I was on longer than 2 years. And I was more involved in Turtles. I was like a more of a player, I guess. So yeah, for me, it's the biggest deal, because like Spider-Verse is awesome and amazing, and I'm proud to have worked on it. But like, I feel ownership over Turtles in a way that I don't with that other project.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, you went to school for concept art, right?
No, I went to RISD for like traditional illustration. My degree is in illustration, and the RISD's not really like a industry focused, concept art focused illustration department like an art center would be. So there were a handful of us that were kind of in that space, but you know, all of the people we looked up to who were like graduating seniors were all like editorial illustrators. You know, it was like Dadu Shin and not concept people, which is cool. Honestly, it's probably helped in the long run, because concept art is like, especially at the time, was such like a narrow aesthetic.
Well, that's what I recall, is like you giving me a business card. It said World Builder on the back. I don't remember what else you had on there, but
yeah,
it was more like it was like a generic concept art feel, which is pretty normal coming out of school. I think most people's work is generic because they're learning something.
Sure.
And so that's maybe why I don't know how long after school I had met you. But it seems like you've been going down this path for a while, and it's certainly evolved. It doesn't look like that kind of like singular concept art aesthetic that you see so often.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope it's evolved. I think it's funny because I don't think I really fit into that around the time I met you. Actually, I don't think I really fit into that then either, because I was having trouble getting hired for those jobs.
Because you were expressing too much, or you were too divergent?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's definitely because I was too cool and too good.
Yeah.
For sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It wasn't that I was just out of school and didn't have some of the skills that they probably needed me to have. But also I think aesthetically there were jobs that I had these skills to get, but the work that I was making was not tonally appropriate, or like, I don't know. But it was 2013 was a different time. I ended up finding my way into games via like the indie games scene, which was like, that was, so around the time I met you, I was like doing that. I think I met you at Part 2 Gallery at your Maybe,
Oh,
no, you know what? It actually was probably through Neve Bavarsky and Jesse Ballmer.
yeah. It was I think it was before.
It was before.
Um,
I think maybe the last time I saw you in person was at Part 2 Gallery.
yeah. You know, we had this group show that we sold nothing in, me, Neve, and Ballmer. It was at
Golden Source Power 3.
Yeah. But it was a good show, but I don't think we sold a damn thing. But maybe we met you there. I can't recall. So there's a video game I'm seeing on the website. You have these projects and games. So that's how you kind of started.
Yeah, totally. It was. I was obsessed with video games, and I'd actually been listening to a ton of video game podcasts probably since like 2009. It kind of became like I didn't have an inner monologue for like 10 years. It was just video game podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, I just was listening to them all the time.
Well, I see you also do card games.
Yeah, that was like an early thing. I was working for
That's cool.
Cards Against Humanity. It was a real cobbled together illustration career at the beginning, but in a way that was I'm happy about.
That's kind of the fun of the beginning.
Totally, absolutely, yeah. It was very cool being like, this guy wants to pay me $500 to do some graphite drawings that are going to be on his board game, maybe, and being just as excited to do that then as I am to like do my job now. It is cool. Like it does. Sometimes I think about, I'm like, oh man, I could never go back. But like, I don't know. I was happy then doing that stuff. Like, it's just your perspective you have on the work you're doing, to a degree.
So what is your job right now, if you had to describe it? Like, obviously that film is done. I'm assuming you don't work for a studio, strictly speaking, or do you work for a specific studio?
My job right now is hanging out and chilling because I'm not currently employed for the next like month, I think. But so I worked through the animation guilds. Like we're all in LA. If we work in animation, for most places, you do it through the guild, or organized labor, all that stuff. And so I'm an employee. I'm not technically an employee of the studio. So there's a lot of like getting on projects and then rolling off projects in this industry. And I finished on Spider-Verse and I rolled right on I left to go to Turtles and then rolled off Turtles, and I'm off for a couple of months. And then I actually have the next thing, but I don't.
You can't talk about it.
Well, I think it's been. I'm gonna be on the sequel. I think that it's announced that Paramount has said they're going to make a sequel, and I can say that I'm gonna do that, I guess.
Nice. Is that exciting?
Oh, dude, I mean,
is that a dream job?
I think so. I think so.
Was how long do you feel that you've been in dream job mode?
I think dream job is like everything relative. I think you can get tired of and become unsatisfied with your dream job. You know what I mean? But
that's just a job, right? That's a component of a job. But if you struggle towards something that's like checks all the boxes off,
yes,
this is a dream job to me.
100%. So I think it's important to make the distinction, because I think Mitchell's was working on Mitchell's versus the Machines was my first film, was like checks all the boxes of the dream job.
Wait, what is that? Mitchell's versus the Machines?
The Mitchells versus the Machines. It's an animated.
Nobody
film.
saw that.
It's on Netflix. We made it at Sony. So sorry, I didn't hear you said.
I just said nobody's seen that, but I'm just joking. I've never heard of it. Oh, okay.
I've seen it. My parents have seen it. My cousin's kid has seen it 1,000 times.
That's cool. That's cool.
So,
what's the film that you think is the highest quality film? I don't know if you're allowed to speak like this, but like, you can't say that, right?
I mean, I can say whatever I want. I think that it's I'm like a completely biased source, obviously. I think there are things about Spider-Verse 2 where it's like the most prestige of the films that I've worked on. It's like the most like high executed at every single level quality, film. But it's also like there are a bunch of criticisms I have of it, and like there are things about Turtles that make me where I'm like none of the other movies that I've worked on have done this, have like had this like level of energy, have felt this organic. Like there's like I think Turtles is my favorite film that I've worked on. Spider-Verse 2 is maybe the highest quality one, just because it's probably going to win the Oscar this year. But Mitchell's Mitchell's is also great and not worse than those movies. So I don't know. This is my favorite question. I get to pick my favorite of the things that I've done.
Well, I've always thought that the horror of animation is working really, really hard on something, and then the movie comes out, it's just a fucking shit show. And that's like 80% of it. Well, higher than 80%.
Yeah.
It just so happens that you work on quality films. It could be because you're working on them. But
I think that I could do the best job I could possibly do on a movie, and the movie could very easily be bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But you seem to be on. I haven't seen any of these films, but I know that their quality.
Sure, right. Yeah, at least relative to the standard fare, I think that's definitely true. Like, I don't think I've worked on anything that's as good as, I don't know, like Princess Mononoke or something like that. But
sure.
That's like most directors don't make a film that good, But yeah, no, I have been very lucky. I sort of got in with this group of people, like, and because I really work with some of my closest friends. Like, it's very lucky. Like a lot of my not employees, because I'm not a boss, but my colleagues that I sit next to are like people that I see all the time on the weekend. They're my friends, and I feel like we've all worked together. Like the teams have overlapped a huge amount from Mitchell's to Across the Spider-Verse to Turtles, and it's just I got plucked out of Instagram. I think that's how it felt anyway. I got plucked out of Instagram by the team at Sony that was making Mitchell's, and they were making Spider-Verse at the same time. Like they were slightly ahead of us in the schedule, and I just got lucky. Honestly, I just got lucky, and it turns out that the people that wanted to hire me were up and coming great directors, and Jeff, who was the co-director on Mitchell's and then did Turtles, and Yashar, who was my production designer in Turtles, brought me over. Yashar worked on Spider-Verse 1 and Mitchell's and Spider-Verse 2 and then Turtles. There's a lot of us that have done all of them, and I feel like it really, as proud as I am of the work that I've done and all of that stuff, and think that I'm good at the job, it really took getting super fucking lucky to be on this specific path that I'm on. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember what your question was. I just started going for it.
Yeah, I don't know either. No, I think I was just talking about the real possibility of working on a shitty film, and one that doesn't align with several aspects of your being, but it seems like you're in a good place with that. So, and then you're going to do it again,
and I'm going to do it again.
And so,
and then
how old are you?
I'm 32.
So that's pretty impressive to be already in that space.
Man.
Do you feel that? Are you grateful?
I'm super grateful. I can't say no, I'm not grateful. I can't be no, I deserve this. This is always going to happen. I'm incredibly grateful. And I think I've, in the last couple years, gotten past not all of what people, I don't really like the term imposter syndrome, but I guess that's what I mean. I feel like I feel comfortable in my skin now in the job, which was not the case for a while. It was a constant, what am I doing here? But I don't know. Maybe after Turtles, I will do, a movie about cartoon animals going on a trip on a boat or something, something fun like that.
That's what you're seeing.
Yeah, we'll see how the strike turns out, and if the industry doesn't fall apart before the Turtles after Turtles 2. But as of now, things are going. Yeah, it's going well.
Yeah, I don't like the term imposter syndrome either.
What do you like?
I think it's just like it's called growing. It's called growth. Like it's called going to the next level.
Right.
It's putting this kind of like weak spin on the idea that like, oh, this is exciting. I'm in a place where I was sent back to like level 1 basically, but I'm in the next chapter. So it's like, this should be exciting. It's not like you should feel out of place when you grow. You should be around artists where you're like, wow, am I actually supposed to be here? Am I faking it?
You should be seeking that out. Right. I mean, really, it's just imposter syndrome is just a modern term for a pretty universal feeling. And so when people go like, oh, I have really bad imposter syndrome, they just mean they feel insecure about where they're at. And like the phrasing of it is like, I feel like the part that I find annoying, not that I don't relate to the feeling. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Terminology is funny.
But so you're already at the top of the mountain. Where are you what do you 10 years from now, if you were still making these movies in the same role, would that be satisfying? Or do you have ambitions beyond where you're at right now?
I mean, yeah, I think that, I mean, the real answer is I want to art direct. I want to production design. I'd like to mold one of these things more like from a leadership position instead of just as an artist, though you can do a lot as an artist. Being a visitive artist on a movie, like there's normally a handful of people where you're like, they may not be in leadership, but they're the people that are making the thing look the way they do. Anyway, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that, I don't really know what visitive means, but that those individuals, their styles are kind of dictating what the people under them have to imitate? Does that make any sense?
I think that it's completely determined by the production. It's like changes from place to place. Like on Turtles, Turtles was a very ground up sort of aesthetic thing. Like it was built around like Woodrow White, of course. You guys share.
Yeah.
So Woodrow's the fucking man. He was like him, and then our boss Yashar, our production designer. Him and like Woodrow and Yashar were like the two guys on this movie. Like they're like, it's sort of like 40% Woodrow, 40% Yashar, and then the rest of us are those numbers. I'm exaggerating, but like it's like they're the two poles, and one of those Yashar is like having influence on the movie from like a leadership position, and Woodrow has a lot of influence in the movie because he's the main character designer of basically every character that's not a turtle, and in that way, like we're definitely responding to what they're doing as visitive artists. But Turtles was, I think, I don't know if it's unique, but it's somewhat unique, at least in that like the rest of the way the film looks is pulled from us, like me, Garrett, our friend Sean, Tiffany, like all of us determined what the look of the movie was because of the way we were drawing, and like we were hired to do our thing. I think that in other productions, like in Spider-Verse, it was a much more top-down sort of deal. In Spider-Verse, like leadership had these ideas, or not even leadership, maybe like Phil Lord, I guess, had these ideas for like, this world is going to be like this. This world is going to be like this. This world is going to be like this. And there was development to figure out those. Like there were people that took ownership of those different directions, like the India universe or like the concept art look of 2099's world. There were people that had individual ownership over those like aesthetic spaces, but ultimately like the way those look, like those concepts came from the top down, and Turtles was a little bit more like, we're making this thing with the aesthetics of the people that we've hired.
Right.
And it was for more bottom up. So it really depends. Like somebody like Woodrow wouldn't have been able to have the influence he had on Turtles because on Spider-Verse, because Spider-Verse is like, there's just like, I don't know. There's so many cooks in that kitchen that there wasn't room for a loud voice like that. And Turtles was like, I don't know. It's sort of built around Woodrow to some degree and Iran Yashar.
Yeah, I can see that stylistically.
Yeah.
And just the way it feels. And I assume with Spider-Verse, it's pre-established in a sense because the first one exists, right? Even though it has a multitude of styles, there's like a language that they're seeking. Yeah,
certainly. But I think that the language of Spider-Verse also sort of like came from, I guess that the origin point for Spider-Verse is Alberto Mielgo, who is like the original production designer on that first movie, who I think he got let go and then they hired a new art team, but they very much carried forward what he had done. So you're totally right. There's that prescribed stuff from that first movie, but there's like 5 new universes in the second movie, and each one of those is supposed to look related to the first movie, but pretty different in a lot of cases. And there's at this point I'm sort of getting into like the nitty gritty of who I think should have done what, and that's
right.
I should not do that, but
no.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say you've worked on 2 of the more experimental American animated films of the last 5 years?
I think that is, if you say experimental, like high budget animated films, I think that's definitely true.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they just stand out as like they're actually trying to do something different.
Right.
So that's pretty wild.
Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen them, but I'm watching the trailers, and I've seen trailers of them, and like, I'll watch them one day.
For sure.
Yeah.
I will, when you watch them, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to like the animation. And, and then it would just be about if I like the movie.
Right. Which I have very little to do with the joke.
Right.
So please, as long as you like the art, I'm happy.
Besides Miyazaki, who's obviously a master.
Sure.
Are there any other animators that really stand out for you?
I would. Have you seen Son of the White Mare?
Oh yeah, it's one of the best.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest animated things.
It's absurd
ever made. Yeah. So Marcel Yankovic is like, I mean, he's. I wish he had made more films at that scale, because.
Well, he made Tragedy of Man, which I just screened at the art center I run, and I don't know if you've seen that, but it is gargantuan.
I have seen pieces of it. It doesn't seem to have the aesthetic cohesion that his other projects have, but I know it was like made over years and years, right?
Yeah. I mean, Son of the White Mare is just absurd. It's actually kind of frightening to me and it seems like it just like arose into consciousness again like 2 years ago.
No, seriously. Well, the Blu-ray came out and like, yeah, totally.
But isn't that horrifying that like that movie's been sitting around? I mean, surely connoisseurs know about it, but I never heard anyone mention it till 2 years ago. Yep. And it was made like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like an obvious masterpiece.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that was it it's sat in a like Eastern Central European ghetto of like culture that doesn't make it over here to the West, you know, for a long time. Also, they just like didn't there. You couldn't purchase it. It just didn't exist. Yeah. It was just like for us. I saw it for the first time. It was playing. Somebody had put it on in a bar in San Francisco, like in 2017, and I like saw it and I was like, what the fuck is that? That movie is like, it's, if I ever am blessed and cursed with the opportunity to write and direct something, or not write but direct something, the like it's just a straight folktale, you know. It's not a like, you know, I'm so tired of like the snarky take on folktales, and that's sort of like, I love I love Shrek, but like everything had now, like everything that's about a like Fantasyland now has to have like at least 5 to 10% Shrek in it if you're going to make it like in an American studio, you know. And I just want to make an epic, gorgeous, like folktale fantasy thing. I don't know, hire Jesse Balmer.
Yeah, I was gonna say
to work on it.
Fucking hire Jesse Balmer.
Hire Jesse Balmer and Sam Bosma, and I mean, no, Sam doesn't. Sam is probably going to be doing that himself, to be honest. But I don't know. Son of the White Mare was such a revelation when I saw it.
That's interesting because I don't really know what your voice is per se in respect to like narrative.
Sure.
That's probably my fault, but
no, it's okay.
Like I mostly know of, well, your visual landscapes and the still lifes and studies, etc. So it's a little shocking to me that you like what I would call the purity of the real folktale energy.
Yeah.
But I would agree. I despise the kind of teenage nature and feel of a lot of animation.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's always this subversion of the folktale, or without understanding the magic and the irrationality of folktales. It's very frustrating to me. You know, Disney has no grasp of any of this anymore. It's
right. They used to, though, which is crazy. Like if you watch, you know, I'm sure there's things from the 50s, like cultural artifacts that I'm not picking up on that just like read to me as old and like wise now. But the like, what's it called? Sleeping Beauty is like a gorgeous, like monumental thing, like the original Pinocchio, you know, like. And it is, I know like things change, like, you know, there's been like 10 versions of Disney since then, but it is crazy to me that they seem to just continue down this sort of like Pixar light path that they've been on for a while. And they have such a rich history, and it just kind of feels like they're missing the point of like what was good about how it all started. I don't know.
I don't think if Star Wars taught people anything, it's like it isn't always clear how to articulate what's good or magical about something. And when you sit down, especially when it's not originating from the person. So like obviously Walt Disney's dead, but and who, I don't even know who the fuck's in charge, Kathleen Kennedy or something.
Bob Iger's back in charge.
Bobby Iger. So like it's really hard, even as George Lucas himself, to understand how magic occurred in those initial films.
Right.
And I mean, you see this all the time with like even Spielberg. It's that kind of attempt to just kind of keep cashing in and recreate something.
Right.
I guess it would be like if you kept taking your wife or girlfriend on the same date over and over again because it was like it worked the first time.
Right. That's I love that metaphor.
But I do think that Disney, if I'm like a little more suspicious of early Disney, I mean, obviously the Grimm fairy tales are far more dark and like they have more teeth. And so maybe it's just been this process of, castration is a strong word, but declawing the stories for acceptability purposes.
Yeah. There's not enough vaginal imagery in Disney's early work. I agree. There's a lot of it in Son of the White Mare, and I think it's better for it, personally.
And it's so gracefully done that you wouldn't even...
Right.
It doesn't even register as a vulgarity, because it's not.
No, it's absolutely not. Yeah, and it's like, and it's not like, yeah, it's there would need to be, the sort of like need for modern stuff to comment on itself. Like when you brought up Star Wars, that sort of like fit in perfectly for me, because Star Wars is like a pulp folk thing, but the originals I adore. The prequels I sort of like in spite of myself, because I was 9 or 8 when I saw the first one. But when I watched the sequel trilogy, I'm disgusted, frankly. Like the middle one, the 8th one, is the best one of those 3, but it's the sequel to like the most like annoying, like everybody who's in Star Wars is super aware that they're in a Star Wars film in those movies, and they're like, when you watch Star Wars, they're just in an epic sci-fi thing, and there's jokes, there's like some snark, but it doesn't feel, I don't know, those movies feel so self-conscious, the new Star Wars movies.
They're also wildly blind to the idea of planning 3 movies in a row and actually knowing your arc. So somehow they've embodied the worst of consciousness and lack thereof. They're just a very beautiful example of failure that artists should really look at. And maybe one day when they're making 3 Turtles films, it'll be something to think about. Like, obviously they made 3, I believe, back in the animatronic 90s Turtles days.
They did.
And I loved those as a child. I haven't watched them again. But it's a real challenge. And I'm curious I've always sat back from thinking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as just an independent comic that is about 4 turtles.
Right.
And why the hell it hit in the way it did. It's very weird. So I assume I don't know, I guess you don't have to think about it because you're not writing the script, right? But like, what do you think the magic of the Turtles is exactly? Because is it just like New York in that time? Is it just that? And they're I don't know. I still don't get it. Like, why is it so appealing? Why does it stay around so long?
Well, New York is the 5th character in the Teenage Mutant.
Oh.
The Turtles. It's true. Turtles, man. I don't know. They're radical. They are. I have no idea what makes them so compelling and why they popped. Because you're right. The original is a comic that was I think it's a direct, like, satire of, who's the artist who did Dark Knight Returns and 300? Frank Miller.
Frank Miller, yeah.
Yeah, they're a direct satire of Frank Miller's Daredevil comic.
Oh, that makes sense. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, they're like, that's why it's so like violent and like drawn like crazy, and like it was like looking at that stuff, and of course it pops off, and I don't know that much about the history, but it pops off, and then they make a kids television show which is tonally completely different in like 3 or 4 years later. It was 84 for the comic and 87 for the series, and then there's another iteration right after in 1990, which is the live action movies, what you're talking about. And that was like the first live action movie was like the peak, that was like when Turtle Mania was real. And all of those, it took 3 stages of existence before it like reached its peak. So they were this weird violent satire. They were this kids cartoon that was like fun and wacky. And then they were kind of like a weirdly gritty live action thing with puppets. And what do all of those things have? Like, I guess all of those versions contributed to its popularity in some way, but then everybody has their own version of the Turtles. Like, there's people out there that are like just ready to kill because Rise of the TMNT season 3 was canceled, which was the version they made before it was the TV show that existed before our movies. And it's actually it's really well made, but it just, didn't make money, I guess. But there are diehard fans for even that version. And like, oh God, I don't know. I think that the Turtles designs, like, they're green guys, they're anthropomorphized, animals, but more anthro, I think, than they are.
They're barely turtles.
Exactly right. Yeah. They're green reptile guys.
Yeah, I mean they don't move slow.
And right.
Their needs
they move the opposite. They move really quickly. And they also, guess what? They're from freaking New York.
Yeah.
But they also talk like they're California surfers.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Michael does. Michael does,
right. But Raph maybe sounds like he's from New York, but the other guys don't sound like they're from New York.
That's because they're smart. It's like they're educated, so they lose their accent.
They're bourgeois.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Michael's working class, and
Raph is 100%. Yeah,
Raph is working class, right.
No, I think Michael is too. He doesn't work. He parties. That's his
he's
nature.
Not working class. He's party class. You're
exactly.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I forget that Michael Bay is a huge part of this narrative as well.
I think we're trying to diminish him in the narrative. I think we're trying to make him a smaller part.
Is there any direct reference to Michael Bay in these movies? I could see Seth Rogen writing some stupid joke about that.
No, I don't think so. Actually,
that's a shame.
So we used to. I can tell you this. There was a version. There's an old version of the movie because we rewrote it halfway through. We being not me, obviously, but they rewrote it halfway through they made a bunch of good changes. One of the things that got cut was the Turtles go to a party. It's a costume party. They dress up in costumes like they're the Turtles, and they dress up in like Spock or like astronaut costumes.
Sure.
And everybody's like, "Wow, you guys are Turtle Spock? That's a crazy costume." People are just like, "Oh, they like just did a weird double costume thing." Anyway, there's a tripping sequence. Mikey
really?
has some avocado. He has some guacamole, which is toxic to turtles, which is literally true, and it makes him hallucinate. And he does a whole tripping psychedelic thing, and one of the things pitched for that sequence was they turn into the Michael Bay Turtles, and among other things, and like freak them out. So there was this reference at one point in the film. I also put the Michael Bay Turtle in one of the images that I don't think it made it into the film. But yeah, that's funny. How do you feel about Michael Bay?
Oh, it's complicated. I think I've come to this place, I'd like to think, of maturity where I start first with respect for artists that have achieved things and made large sums of money by making. I think in some ways he's returned to the idea that films should be primarily visual.
Right.
Which I think is actually a good thing, except that the nature of his expression, visually speaking, is just not my vibe. I used to draw and just have the transformers on the side, and then anytime I would hear mechanical noises, I would look over to watch the sheer beauty of the transformations. Now, like that's like, he didn't do that. It's whatever. But I believe did he make Bad Boys? I don't know. I feel like he did. Yeah. I mean, it's like convenient to shit on him, but
I'm so with you, man.
Yeah. I'm not an apologist because I don't know what his best film is.
Right.
I do know my brother sent me this video once about like the cinematic genius of Michael Bay, and it was like a 40-minute YouTube video kind of exploring his language. And
did you watch it?
I did, yeah.
You watched it? Okay, maybe I'll watch that. I don't know if I'm an apologist, but I would say I'm an appreciator. I think I had the same reaction that everybody had, which is like, this man is doing bad things to storytelling, which I don't not think that still, but like, I love that first Transformers movie, man. It's really stupid and full of Optimus Prime punches a Transformer in the face and then cuts his arm off. Like, it's awesome. And
well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about the Transformers, so it's like,
yeah,
should it be this intellectual exploration of something?
Right.
No.
Right.
I watched and screened this Jean Cocteau film, Beauty and the Beast. I don't know if you've seen that, but
I'm aware of it.
It's from the 40s, and like, that's a film that's really, well, first of all, it's like a fairy tale, obviously,
right.
folk
Actually,
tale.
This is the original Beauty and the Beast.
I think it's probably the earliest film.
Yeah. No, I've seen. Yeah,
he's adorable. The Beast is adorable, but it's so visually poetic and so powerful, and so primarily visual that when I'm talking about Bay, they're completely different, like in terms of their sustenance. But there's something to be said for, I have this technology at hand, I'm going to make Avatar kind of logic, even though I think Avatar is a stupid film.
Yeah.
But again, to denigrate, I try and more, and it's really a try, so I don't know if I successfully execute it, to not shit on things that have mass appeal just because they have mass appeal. Like Coldplay's got good albums.
Sure. I did buy one when I was 11 or whatever. No, I'm with you. Also, it's a matter of survival for me. I work in Michael Bay's house. Paramount Pictures there's a street named after Michael Bay and Paramount Pictures studio in Hollywood, which is where our office is. So I'm incentivized to appreciate him or learn to appreciate him.
The house that Michael Bay built?
The house that Michael Bay did some renovations on. I think there's been a lot of people that built it, but Tom Cruise is in there working on the house.
Wow.
I have never seen him, but I can say that last Michael Bay thing, I thought Ambulance was fun as shit. I don't know if you saw that. It's really stupid. It's got some really weird. In Ambulance, Michael Bay uses he does the kind of shit that like a Terrence Malick would do, where he like points the camera at like a daisy blowing in the wind in like a poetic way. He does that, but he does it with the most obnoxious, insane, like clearly artificial drone shots, where he'll just like do like an insane drone shot down a building in downtown Los Angeles, and it's just this like weird tonal gap creator between scenes, and you're like, this is completely out. Like, the artifice of the filmmaking is so on display here, and I'm loving it anyway, and I don't, it's really strange.
No, I never even heard of this film.
It's not good, but it is like it's a visual experience for sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll check it out when I'm like 85. Yeah,
that's about the priority it probably deserves.
I mean, it's funny because when you talk about like an animated film, I think the expectation is primarily that it's going to be visual.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm going to watch this Turtles film and be like, wow, from the narrative perspective. But it looks like very visually compelling. Same for the Spider-Verse. So I think people like Bay obviously you want everything to be clicking, but it's like Matrix 2 is a horrible film. It's probably worse than a Michael Bay film. And I don't know if it's more respected, but there's shots in there where I'm just like, this is fun.
Yeah.
But I'm expecting this to be deeper because Matrix 1 is deeper.
Is one of the greatest films of all time. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I think. Well,
yeah, not in terms of like necessarily my taste, but in terms of culture, like deeply important.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're on like this pop culture tangent.
No,
it's all good.
I like a little film minute.
I mean, you participate in pop culture,
right?
In a big way.
Yeah.
So, are you informed about pop culture? Do you care about pop culture?
I think compared to people that are actually informed, I'm not informed. Like I don't really read Twitter. I get most of my, I keep up with politics, but not really pop culture. I sort of like get it secondhand from like listening to people talk about it on podcasts. But I guess I'm pretty ear to the ground with film and video games, so that if that count, I mean, I guess that counts.
So you still care about video games?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It went from being the only thing I cared about for a long time to being something I have a lot of love for, but don't like dedicate time to in the same way anymore. But I still love games. I'm playing Zelda right now. It's pretty good. I just got a Switch for the first time. I played the original Breath of the Wild on my ex's Switch, and now I'm like, fuck, I need to buy a new one so I can play this new Zelda. And I just started it. But so yeah, I still love games. But it's definitely like,
how many hours a week do you think you play video games?
Oh, this week I haven't played it at all. Yeah, this week I haven't played it at all. The last 7 days, I'd say like it's feast and famine. Sometimes it's like 20, sometimes most of the time it's closer to like 5 to 0. But it really depends.
Yeah, I mean, what does your average day look like? Are you working most of the time?
Well, I mean, so if I'm like on a project, if I'm on a movie, then it's, get up at 7:30 or 8, get to the studio by 9:30 or 10, or 10:30. I'm at the studio working. We get lunch. I'm at the studio until 6 to 8, depending on how things go. And then I come home and I don't know. I watch a movie. I do normal shit. Yeah, it's pretty 9 to 5 now that I think about it. It's pretty like 10 to 6. But I don't know. There's like plein-air painting thrown in there in the morning sometimes. Every once in a while you work from home for a day and you blow off work for the first half of the day and just watch like 2 Mission Impossible movies in a row. And then you have lunch at 2 and then you work. That happens. Fuck.
You've divulged too much.
I divulged too much. No, I think that's.
I mean, this is what humans do.
I think that's how it goes. Not that often, but.
So you have like a pretty healthy balance of digital painting and real painting, would you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. Though I will say like one of my things that I mourn is like my traditional painting, it mostly comes in the form of plein-air painting, which is great. I love it. It's wonderful social activity. You go outside, but like it's not the same as like making work for yourself. And I do want to pursue that more in traditional stuff because I find that energy tends to just go into the film. Like anything where I'm like concepting something or coming up with ideas, like that energy is just film focused. And
right, I think that's why it's no knock, it's just the truth. Like I think that's where I say like I'm curious what your vision would be if you were like handed a film from start to finish. But I mean, you got plenty of time. Technically you've got the skill now to express that. I think that's the proper order of things. Is like I think it's good to work from a technical place for at least a decade and a half. Sure. And then it allows you the tools to use it for the rest of your life to kind of actually say something.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you say that, because I feel that way about myself. I'm like, well, I need to find out what my vision is by doing it, because I'm insecure that I don't know what it is right now. And I think it used to be more clear to me. I felt like when I was in college and like in the time when I was like more of a freelancer after school, I was like outside of the structure of productions, and I was, maybe in a more scatterbrained way, but I was like creating the looks and the aesthetics of the projects that I was working on at that time. And even then they were sort of like broad, like, I have a couple different spaces in which I work, painting, drawing based, there's like a range there. But yeah, I don't know. I do think that there has been a little bit of like, maybe this is overstating it, but arrested development in that specific area for me, just because I, have this really satisfying, wonderful dream job that I get to do. But it's not a replacement for like pursuing one's personal voice, though I do bet I am able to put my personal voice into the films. And that's part of, I think, why I like don't hate it, is because that actually does work, like I do see myself in them. So, it's a mixed bag, Yeah.
I mean, self-expression can be largely overrated, I think, but I mean, and you're on a good team of people, so I think that's really important. Right. But I think there comes that state in terms of like the hierarchy of needs where you start, like, you got it all, and then you're like, but who am I and what am I trying to express? And what's funny is like folktales aren't, on the surface, maybe like, making a folktale wouldn't seem to be a vehicle for that, in the sense that it's very depersonalized. I feel that's what interesting to me. Like, it's not about an opinion per se,
right.
But just by the selectivity of what you present, I think knowing you made those decisions, it says something about you as an individual.
Exactly,
and that's important ultimately.
Totally, yeah. There is a. There are multiple ways to make work. Some people, they don't know what they're saying. They're just like producing the thing, and it's intuitive. And then people interpret it. But yeah, when you're working on a big project, like I guess a movie, and every single element of it is considered and like labored over, it's possible that all of those decisions end up I'm kind of just restating what you said, which is that like the things that you choose to show to people are indicative of like your opinions. And anyway, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I fantasize about not quitting, but like taking a 6-month break and just making paintings. Of course, I actually have the time to do that now. I'm not working until October, and I have been chilling and not doing that. So maybe this call will be the spark that I needed.
Well, I mean, the question would be, by what mechanism would you do it? Would it be a comic? Because painting is painting, and no knock on painting. I just don't know. I feel like your paintings are an exploration of color and form largely, sure, and an understanding of that. Like almost like a study, like a technical exercise. Yeah,
there's I think that they originate in the form of a technical exercise, but I think that, at least I hope that when I do them, my like where I'm choosing to put the camera or the
sure
the box, like, hopefully the choices that I'm making like feel I don't know. When I was doing these nocturnes, I definitely was like trying to communicate some sort of like mood. I was trying to communicate like some sort of unhappiness that I had during that period. And, but you're not wrong, because they are studies, they're representations of a thing that I'm sitting in front of.
Yeah, they're less explicit. I mean, you can definitely communicate via a landscape. But I guess my question would be, if you were to try to break out of that, would it take the form of a comic or some kind of narrative that you had total control of?
Right, that's a great question. I mean, I think that I have some anxiety around writing, and I think I would like to do a comic. I started dabbling with one the other week, actually, but I haven't made any progress on it. Maybe a comic. See, that's the thing, is because I've had so little time focused on this. It's sort of daunting almost. It's like I think that doing more narrative illustration-y type paintings, I think, is part of that, or maybe in drawing form, maybe those become a comic. I don't know. I just need to do it.
Have you made a comic?
I've made a couple very short comics, but not the way like you have made comics, or that like comics people have made comics.
Were you going to propose a challenge before I cut you off?
Oh, I was going to say, hey, maybe I give me a year, and if I'll make something that I can come back and tell you how I expressed myself.
Maybe a kid's book would be cool.
Kids book is interesting.
I don't know if you give a shit about kids though. You gotta care. You gotta want it. I think it's also like that kind of weird. Like, we think of ideas as this kind of. I don't even know how to put it. Like, we just think, oh yeah, well, if I just sit around, this idea is going to come. Or even if I think about it a lot, I'm going to get this idea. I don't really think that's how they work.
Totally.
And so, maybe in these weeks where you're chilling or just meandering, that'll be it. Maybe that'll do the work. Sometimes you get so hung up in work. It's like, it's so precise, the vision that you're trying to execute.
Yeah.
It can be kind of hard.
I think that that's why ideas scare me, is because they become something before they've actually been made. And that's uncomfortable to me. I feel much more comfortable with stuff that I'm like, I made this and I can see the idea in it, but it's sort of like a result of stuff that I've done, I guess. I think my plan, if we're just being practical, my plan for the next couple months is to try and draw more character focused stuff in my sketchbook for X amount of time per day, and just via exploring that, hopefully sort of land on some imagery that I connect with, or rediscover imagery that I've connected with in the past, and end up making something from that. I think really just I think I tend to get paralysis when the longer I don't make something. And as soon as I start making the thing, then, or whatever it is, everything becomes easier and possible, and so I think that as long as I start drawing and don't stop, that'll be, at least for a while, that'll be a success in itself,
Sure.
So we'll see what fruit comes from that, I guess. Maybe a comic.
It's a great challenge. The comic is a great challenge. So what is this? You've been teaching VizDev.
I've been teaching VizDev. Yeah.
How long has that been going on?
Sounds like you're asking me about somebody I'm dating.
Interrogation.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love it. It's awesome. I taught my first class this year, actually. I had done lectures and stuff before, but in February or March, sometime in the past this year, I taught I guess it was a 2-month class. It was 8 weeks. 9 weeks. And the class is a style exploration and like sort of aesthetic concepts class combined with a look at like the concept pipeline for feature film. So like I'm basically taking a lot of the illustration like education stuff that I had at RISD and applying it to the types of shit you do for my job. And I find that like my work in feature animation feels unique, but when I feel unique when I'm surrounded by people from the animation world. But then when I'm with my like more like when I'm around like, not to bring up Jesse again, but like Jesse and Neve or like people from my illustration and like more fine arts like friend group and past, like I feel more generic. And I think that like my biggest strength in the like feature animation world is that I have a couple different like aesthetic like voices that are a little unusual for that space, but are also like they're to my personal taste. That's how I've been successful. And I'm trying to like teach development of personal taste and I guess trying to like find ways for people for students to like solve the problems that their like clients need them to solve like in a typical studio setting, but do it in a way that allows them to like express themselves and like be themselves as an artist. Like it's kind of basically all that we've been talking about, like trying to teach that. And I just find, I'm doing the little bit. This sounds so like lofty and maybe I sound like an asshole or whatever, but I'm trying to like fight the like mono like aesthetic vision of the animation industry, which obviously Spider-Verse has been doing that and Turtles has contributed to that. But I don't know. I want people to draw the way they want to draw and like find themselves while still working and getting paid enough.
Sure. I think it's an interesting challenge. I think because the truth is, there's not room for everyone to be interesting aesthetically.
It's true.
And so that's why animation's kind of interesting. It's like, there's Miyazaki and he's looking over every cell and he's not asking anyone else to reinvent his style. There's kind of this like very clear hierarchy that differs severely from just making a painting on your own as a fine artist. And it's kind of fascinating. How do you retain humanity and magic in that space? Everyone has different solutions. Obviously, Miyazaki's critical of the Disney structure, like the traditional Disney structure, which is more like assembly line.
Right.
But what's interesting is your film has it sounds more like a Pee-wee's Playhouse scenario or even Adventure Time scenario where the logic is just get a bunch of talented friends in the same room and let them have an identity and just let it organically unfold.
Right.
I don't know if studios can understand that or replicate that because that's not really a thing that you're always going to have at hand. It's actually kind of rare.
You kind of happen upon a situation and then you take advantage of the talent.
And then you sit there for another 5 years trying to make Adventure Time-ish things that aren't good, in my opinion, and it just doesn't. Yeah. And this is like the cycle of life almost, where it's just like, all right, now there's like this descent and it's inevitable, but let's cash in.
Totally.
And then we'll wait for the upswing of the next, thing. And I think that's the hard part about teaching or trying to teach people to have a voice or to be more interesting. Because I don't know, I just think like everyone has a differing degree of who they are and
totally.
Some people are uninteresting. Some people are uninteresting and they draw interesting things and vice versa. So, I guess the best thing you could teach is just like I still find that, like, if I can think back to art school, it sounds like you were probably well taught in this area. It's like being taught technical shit, even though I kind of didn't want to do it back then, is like really what you should be going to school for, because all that time spent alone and inside yourself is where style and voice is going to emerge. But all that technical stuff, I think, really needs to be ushered in by someone who knows better than you. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree about learning technical. I mean, I partially agree, but I also think that the like art center is the much better technical school. If we're art center and RISD, those are like the two of the big schools. Art center is much more technical. If I wanted to learn technical stuff, that would have been the place to go. I think I did learn more technical stuff at RISD than some people there, but not than everybody. I think for me, me drawing the stuff that I wanted to draw, like, and being interested in the stuff that I was interested in was, and like expressing that was my sort of asset. And I don't think that happens as readily at a place like Art Center. And I think that the aesthetics that come out of Art Center have sort of reflected that. There's like a couple house looks, and the generic Disney sort of Disney and then also Riot Games are like the two things that kind of come out of Art Center right now. That, and I guess like the hard surface modeling concept guys. So to me, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I think that if you're going to, it also all depends on the cost, right? Like, I don't think anybody should go to art school at all. Like, we're actually asking, because it's too fucking expensive and it won't be worth it unless your family is rich.
Well, it's still expensive if you're rich, and it's probably not worth it, to be honest. Either way.
Sure. I mean, if you're so rich that $250,000 doesn't mean anything to you, then it's definitely worth it.
Maybe. I still question its value, but
maybe you're right. I think, to me, like I was given the opportunity at RISD to pursue a lot of my own interests, and I think that has carried through into like why I have had success in the spaces that I've had success in. And I don't know if more technical training would have harmed me, or if I had the right mix, or if the people that go to Art Center and get all that technical training and then make boring work, if they were just going to make boring work regardless, and they just, like, I don't know.
Well, you probably are getting a better understanding as you try to teach people. I think
certainly
there's like,
being the opportune word there. I'm trying to teach people. Sometimes it works.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, there's definitely a nature nurture thing at play. There can only be a certain ratio of a certain people. There's not going to be another Miyazaki. It doesn't matter. I don't know how he emerged in reality, but it's just a different type of human.
I think he was born via a seashell carrying him on sea foam onto the beach. I think that's what happened. He was nude. His hair was covering himself.
He's pretty grumpy for being born in that way.
Yeah, totally.
I'm assuming you flew to Japan and watched his new film.
No, I haven't yet.
That would have been cool, since you live I feel like it's doable in California.
Yeah, I've actually never been to Japan. I have deep respect for him, and I do like some anime, but I've never been like a Japan guy.
No, I mean, that makes sense. Your work is more it has a more Western vibe. Like, there's kind of a respect for visual reality, optical reality.
Sure,
it's like that's where the transcendent lies, not in the symbolic flatness of depiction, which is maybe why I'm a little more interested by the idea that you would tilt towards folktales, which skew in my eyes towards like a symbolic structure than a kind of more human narrative that's kind of about emotion, and that's where the transcendence emerges.
Right.
But that could be a very interesting combination.
Well, it's funny because I think that a lot of my interests are in that symbolic space, but a lot of the work that I post online is very in a human world type of work. I'm a huge, one thing I love more than anything else is going to Eastern Orthodox monasteries and churches.
Sure.
It's like, I've been to Greece. Went to Georgia recently. Went to a bunch of monasteries in Turkey, and all of the like iconographic, like the super flat imagery, the like Byzantine icon aesthetic, all of that stuff. That's obviously literally flatter, but the and doesn't exist in space. Do you know about the origin behind that style? That there's this whole like sort of like theological and philosophical reasoning for like why they flatten stuff.
I have my perspective on why I think that's valuable, but no, tell me.
I'm gonna completely butcher it, but essentially there is a when you're flattening things like as imagery, it's supposed to represent that they're not like that the physical world is not important. It's the spiritual worlds and spiritual like cleansing and health and the state of your soul is like what they're talking about. And so they're trying to like bring the viewer into a more like soul and spiritually aware state by removing elements of realism that anchor them to and so like but there's like also a lot more like there's way more detail and specific shit but anyway, I love all of that stuff, but you're right, like that it's funny because I think that a lot of the work that I do make is like feels like it, I guess Western. I think one thing that I'm really interested in is like I was a big, before the Russian Ukraine war broke out. I went on this big trip recently. I just got back from it after Turtles, and my original plan back in like 2019, 2020. I was like, this pandemic's going to end, Turtles are going to finish, and I'm going to go to Russia for 3 weeks. Okay. That was one of my plans. I wanted to go. That whole the aesthetic, I guess, lineage of sort of like Eastern and Central Europe has always been like really inspirational to me. But I don't know if that comes across I guess it doesn't come across in my work to you.
No, I do see it. I do see it at times.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. By Western, I'm kind of drawing a very crude dichotomy, but
I see.
What I mean is this kind of notion of visual optics as a form of high realism that really emerges. Like once you introduce perspective in the Renaissance, like there's more of a push towards a certain type of humanism and realism as a transcendent goal. And I much more align with this idea of like flatness as a sacred and psychological space.
Right.
But I think, to be fair, the process of painting visual reality can be transcendent. Sure. And it can turn the mundane into something more. They're just different paths. And I just see one as a little more Western in its pursuit, but it makes sense given your job that like you are providing often the backdrops and the mood of something. So it is grounded in a much more of a reality.
Totally.
But, like the Turtles movie is interesting in the sense that it has, I don't know, it's playing with that kind of painterly flatness in these deeper spaces. So I think it's a cool combination. But thanks. I see in your work there's a lot of I don't know, I'm not seeing it literally, but I think I recall more like skeletal Halo worlds, kind of more.
Yeah.
They're like darker in some ways.
There is some of that. Yeah, it's funny. I always sort of struggle with. Not struggle that much, but there's a little bit of like, I know what my interests are, but the work that I put out into the world is like, people are like, oh, Kellan Jett, he's that plein-air guy. Or or most people are like, who the fuck are you is actually what's happening. But like, I think a lot of people knew me for making mostly like landscape painting stuff. But then there is a whole period where there was a period where I was known for making more like Where's Waldo style illustrations. That was like a good year and a half of like work that I did.
What the hell does that mean?
Like just like pulled out like, like sort of like in that Where's Waldo style format, or like when Michael DeForge does a page where it's got a bunch of little guys in a field, like that sort of thing. I had just because of the work that I had gotten hired to do, it was mostly through Cards Against Humanity, actually. I'd been hired to do maybe like 6 big illustrations for them that were all, over a period of a year and a half, that were all kind of in that space. And I had never really done that before, but it like influenced my design and became like my identity for at least some of my clients for a while. And that's like almost felt like it was like I went with it, but it almost felt like it was out of my control. I was also doing a lot of like isometric perspective work for video games, because a lot of games have that sort of perspective. And there was this period of time where I was like, all I wanted to do was like make paintings that were cinematic, and I wanted to get work that would allow me to do that. And I think landscape painting was sort of an attempt to kind of move in that direction. And then I ended up working in film, and now I'm like doing that. And I'm like, well, this can't be the best thing out there. I need to move back towards being more symbolic. This conversation is funny because talking about this thing that you've very clearly identified something that I've been back and forth with forever. So,
no, that makes sense. And I mean, I think the Russia, I don't know if this is, I think it is part of the West in a certain way. I mean, it's heavily European influence. And at least I draw the line crudely. And it definitely talks about what period in time, because Orthodox versus Catholic art is very different.
Right. And that's the distinction I think I'm trying to make as far as East-West. But I understand your more broad distinction is Orthodox still feels, I mean, it's kind of right there in the middle, right? Like there's the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. There's the Egyptian Coptic Orthodox Church. And it doesn't really feel Western. It feels... Yeah. But anyway.
There's a beauty to sitting in between those places. But I think that's what's interesting, having, again, just like seen the trailers of these 2 films. It seems like they're playing a lot with those 2 different realities, where like a Pixar film, or it just isn't, you're just simply you're in a visual space the whole time.
Right.
And it is that reality of that thing. And that's where you're at. There's probably instances of them trying to break that up. I can't recall.
Yeah.
My opinion of Pixar is not terribly high, but I think it's only at this point, I thought there was a time where I had great respect for it, but I think it's natural. It's so hard to maintain greatness over that duration.
They created the space that I exist in now, they started the whole fucking thing. And it would be unreasonable for them to for us to expect it to them to continue to be the greatest at it. But I don't know. I'm optimistic about Pixar. I think that I think that they're sort of scrambling to put like new people in positions of power to like make creative decisions. And I'm curious, like, I think it's been rough with the pandemic and like stuff getting put to streaming or whatever, but I'm hopeful that the new batch of stuff will be cool. But I was going to say that there's the thing about Pixar that's, when you were saying like the visual space that stuff and like Pixar stuff exists in is it exists in one way, basically.
Often. I think often.
Yeah. Very almost exclusively true up until I think kind of relatively recently. I guess Incredibles has some sort of playing with that stuff. But it is funny, like right now, the in vogue thing for animation, like the natural direction for it to explore is to explore looking like non-digital stuff again, like traditional media, you know?
Yeah.
But that is its own weird little ghetto avenue, you know, like it's like a cul-de-sac. Like that's like, it's not a dead end, but it's like you know, you're like, well, I'm trying to make it look like this thing that doesn't normally move, you know? And that's kind of the magic of it. Whereas like, I guess Pixar before was trying to, it's using 3D graphics, but it's not trying to look like 3D graphics. It's trying to look real. And then the aesthetic that it lands on is this sort of like weird 3D graphics middle ground, which then becomes the aesthetic that everybody tries to go for.
Right.
You know, cause like, I think that our actual ability to achieve photorealism is much beyond like what's being, you know, except for like Avatar, like in animated films, like they're not even going for photorealism anymore with the Pixar stuff. They're going for this, like, they're going for the look of the films that were most successful when Pixar was at its height.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember they made that Final Fantasy film like 10 years ago, and they were clearly just trying to make a film that looked real, and it was super weird.
Yeah,
I think it was the Final Fantasy film.
It was. It's called it's like Spirits Within. It's Final Fantasy Spirits Within. And I don't think it was 10 years ago. I think it's like 15 or 16 years ago at this point, which is crazy. Really? Yeah, I think Spirits Within was like, oh God, I want to say like 2006.
It's 2001.
2001. Wow. 20 years ago.
It's 22 years ago. Holy shit. That's
crazy. Oh my God.
That's scary.
Yeah. I was like 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this fucking Elemental looks like trash. I mean, for me, like, you can judge an animated film by any still, really. And I just think, like, the visual language of that. I haven't seen it, but
sorry.
Wow, so ugly, that film. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh God. I have some like friends who worked on Elemental, and they're like wonderful and so talented. I just want Pixar to
succeed.
I want them to succeed. I want a healthy Pixar is
it's good for the world.
It's good for the world.
I mean, what's interesting talking to you, and it's good to hear, is like I've spoken to several animators, or at least individuals in the animation world, and it sounds pretty doom and gloom at this moment, but it sounds like you got a good thing going in terms of work and perspective work, and that's good. And you have some optimism about the industry in general.
I do. I mean, you know, I feel like it's the doom and gloom goes so far beyond animation that like that's the part that I'm more worried about. Climate change or whatever it is. I'm very lucky that I am in this position right now where there's work to be done. There's definitely been a contraction though. Like the kids animated series stuff at Netflix get completely gutted. Tons of layoffs, just like crazy. People who like when I got into the industry, I was like, oh, they're a really established phys dev artists. They're like, their career is going great. And then like, I'm getting hit up from them like, oh, hey, like if you know anybody who's looking, I'm like, you're looking for work? What?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So not to be too optimistic. It does suck ass right now. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel very lucky. I had a meeting with DreamWorks the other day, and the Turtles. I was nothing against DreamWorks. They've been doing some interesting stuff lately, actually. But the Turtles offer was I just can't walk away from doing a sequel to that movie, so I ended up going with that. But I don't know. There's stuff on the horizon. I think it is kind of a bit of a boom and bust cycle, and always has been. So I have a feeling that there will be new projects in the next year or two. But who knows? Maybe we're fucked. Maybe I'm never gonna have it this good ever again. Maybe this.
Yeah, that is a good way to think about it, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's less stressful if you just assume it's gonna be shit.
Well, you can also be grateful right now if that's the case.
That's a great point too. Maybe I'll try that.
All right. Well, I think I like ending it on that note.
Beautiful. I could tell we were circling
the drain.
Circling the target. Circling. The landing point. The landing point. Yeah. We're parachuting onto a landing. Yeah, dude. Thank you so much. For sure. I had a really good time. You're good at this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I like talking to people. I think the interesting thing is talking to artists. They're often like super self-conscious about speaking. I think in general. So yeah, it's fun to just be casual about it and not make it feel so important. Maybe.
No, totally. Yeah, you're right. This didn't feel important at all.
Yeah, exactly. It just is what it is.
No, I had a great.
All right, so plug the movie for it.
Yeah,
give me one pitch.
All right, so if you like radical fights, if you like cool, sick art with ooze and scribbles and punching and kicking and jokes, you should go see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, out now in theaters near you. I'm incredibly proud of it, and it's take your kids. It is for children and teens, so set expectations accordingly. But go watch it.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Good talking to you.
Cool, man. Do I just hit leave the recording? Is that the move?
You should say bye.
Oh, I should say bye. Yeah, bye. And dude, thank you so much.
Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chin. Next up, we have Nick Ilizada.